All right, some breaking inputs which have just come in where Tuesday will mark the 5th anniversary of one of the world's worst disasters, a building collapse that had killed more than 1,100 workers in Bangladesh. The Western clothing brand that benefits from Bangladesh's low wages faced immense heat and much was in fact promised. But the question, of course, is have the victims and also their families got any justice or any compensation? So this of course marks the 5 years since that terrible disaster in Bangladesh, where one of the Western clothing brands which was benefiting from the low wages that are paid out in Bangladesh was involved in this tragedy. And this of course is one of the worst industrial disasters in the world, is how it has been described, where 1,130 workers and spotlighted the Western clothing brands benefiting from the low wages in the country. But there, of course, is mounting anger within Bangladesh about what has in fact played out since the incident.
কুরমা পোলাও খাইতেছে আসুন রানার বিচার হয় নাই, রানার বিচার আমরা পেলাম না, আর হাসিনাও আমাদের পাশে কোনদিন দাঁড়াই নাই।
আমরা ইউনিয়ন করতে গেলে আসলে সরকারের বাধা, মালিকদের বাধা, এবং মালিকটা কিছু ফ্যাক্টরির মধ্যে এলাকার মাস্তান ব্যবহার করে, তারা শ্রমিকদেরকে পিটিয়ে বের করে দেয়, তারা আসলে ইউনিয়ন করতে পারে না। আমরা আশা করছিলাম যে আসলে আমরা রানা প্লাজার পরে ইউনিয়ন আরো বেশি করতে পারবো, কিন্তু আসলে তা না।
All right, so that is what some of the victims, in fact, had to say about this disaster that had taken place in 2013, where the Rana Plaza building, which is said to have housed factories of some of these Western clothing brands, came crashing down, resulting in the deaths of as many as over 1,000 people. And to discuss more on this, we are joined in by our Dhaka Bureau Chief, Saad Mahdi, who's joining us from Dhaka. Saad, this of course is an extremely somber moment. 5 years have come and gone by, but the people who lived through that disaster are still waiting for justice.
Sorry, indeed. Since 2013, when the disaster took place, there have been a number of commitments made by the Western and European high street retailers through a coordinated funding arrangement to compensate the workers. And in the process, there was a trust fund created, and it was coordinated by the ILO, the International Labour Organization, to disseminate, to provide to the families of the victims and the casualties. That has been disbursed to some extent, but still many of the families say that the full amount of compensation has not reached on many occasions for most of them. And that remains a concern. But even otherwise, what I've gathered is that there have been studies carried out by the ActionAid Bangladesh, and they have found out in surveys that nearly 48% of the workers from the Rana Plaza building, where 5 factories were located, are still unemployed. And they're either unemployed because of their physical conditions or the mental, psychological trauma that they have lived through over the days. The Rana Plaza disaster had taken a week's time to recover many of the bodies, and it took a major toll on these workers. And it's been 5 years they have not been able to recuperate from those trauma to get back into work. Some have shifted from the industry altogether, gone into house help, and gone into farming and other forms of work. Others have gone back to work, but what's positive, however, is that the Alliance for Bangladesh Worker Safety and the Accord, these two associations or bodies were created to inspect factories across Bangladesh, garment factories, to make sure that the compliance of the factories are adequate and they're compliant, so that another disaster like this doesn't take place. And surveys have revealed that majority of the factories were vulnerable to disasters like the one that Rana Plaza had experienced. So that has changed in course of time. At this point in time, almost all factories, as well as the bodies that were formed by the international rights organizations in coordination with the rights organizations as well as the retailers, have ascertained that these factories are now safer than how they used to be back in 2013.
Absolutely indeed, Saad. And considering the kind of labels, the international brands which actually had their factories in this, I mean, if I could just read out a few names, we have these international brands such as Bon Marche, Walmart, Matalan, Primark, Mango, all of these, garment industries, they were there because of the cheap labor in Bangladesh. And also considering the fact that the Rana Plaza that we're talking about was owned by Sohail Rana, who's said to be the youth wing member of the Bangladesh Awami League, the party which is in power now. Is that something that has made this walk to justice that much more harder for the people, considering that the person who had owned this structure is in fact part of a party which is ruling Bangladesh?
So I would say, as you've mentioned about the owner of the building, Sohail Rana, and his support from the ruling party politicians, this is, of course, it was revealed right then when it happened. But I would say it's a case of more of the legal prolonging of crime cases that has delayed justice for many of these workers. Which is why it's been 5 years and the trial process and investigation is still going on. There have been influences made, of course, and but the government has, I would say that they have, what I gathered from my inquiries in this incident, I followed this since the beginning of when it happened. So they have investigated, they have prosecuted, they have arrested this person almost immediately to make sure that this case doesn't get away, unlike a lot of the cases that eventually don't find justice. So if the trial process is still going on, sadly, it's taking longer than expected. It's been 5 years already.
Right. And also some of the victims have in fact turned up and said that they've had very little help from the government. Has compensation been paid in these cases?
As happens with workers, they are coming from a very marginalized background and without a voice, except when they unite on the streets to protest and demand their rights. At this point in time, like the report has mentioned, that many workers have expected that they would be allowed to form the unions, the trade unions and factories to raise their demands, to protest anything that is unusual that they don't like. But that gets very difficult for them to form. Any trade unions formed in any factories comes with difficulty, and eventually they risk losing their jobs. But whoever is part of those labor unions. So that gets difficult for them. So which is why they're coming from, saying that they have very little expectation from the government because there is not much intervention in favor of them, in their words.
Absolutely indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Saad Ahmadi, for joining us from Dhaka and getting us all those updates.